from our Career Center with us who are going to be discussing Duke's career development process, sharing resources for you and your students, and talking a little bit more about career readiness. So before we get started, just a few housekeeping things. At the bottom of your screen, you should see a Q&A box. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to go ahead and put those in the Q&A, and we're going to do our best to answer as many as we can. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Greg Victory, who is the Fannie Mitchell Executive Director of the Career Center, to go ahead and get us started.
Thanks, Jordan. Good evening, good afternoon, maybe even good morning for some folks. I'm going to do a quick introduction and let Rachel introduce herself, and then we have some slides. The goal tonight is actually to give you some context and some content, and then spend the rest of the time trying to answer the questions that you all have. So I joined Duke almost 2 years ago now, to be 2 years in June, right in the middle of the pandemic. So if you want to understand what my level of risk aversion, that should give you some indication of that. Have been really excited about the work we're doing in the Career Center, and most recently worked at Tufts University, but I'm coming up on almost 25 years of work in higher education, and most of that in the career space. So I'll let Rachel introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Coleman. I'm the Director of Career Development and Education at Duke. I've been at Duke for about 4 years and have been in the career development space for a little over 12 now. So it's good to be here with everybody tonight.
And just so everybody knows, Rachel oversees our advising team. So the folks who are building a good deal of our programming are working on advising students one-to-one and groups. A lot of the content on our website is developed from her team. And we have two other sections of our team. We have our employer relations folks who do sort of what I refer to as new business development. They reach out to employers, help them get connected to make sure they're recruiting Duke students. And then our communications and outreach team, which oversees parts of our operation, our social media, website management, communication, and marketing. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to jump right in. So to give you some context, we're going to start sort of giving you an idea of what we understand about the students that are currently at Duke. And tonight's conversation is really focused on undergraduates. If there happen to be parents of graduate students and professional students, we're glad to talk more specifically about that as we get forward. But our understanding is the primary audience this evening is families of undergraduate students. So the world is shifting, right? When I went to college, this was a statistic that was really more about parents, right? I'm sending my kid to this school and I hope they get a job afterwards because I don't want them living in my basement. Now, some of those things have changed because some parents want their kids to come back and live in their basement. But the reality is what's shifted is students are now selecting colleges based upon the belief that a degree from a specific institution is going to help them get a job, right? These are students who are much more focused on what happens after college, how do they get there, what are the things that they're paying attention to? And that comes with both benefits and it comes with challenges. Sometimes students come in and they kind of have blinders on and aren't really considering all the opportunities that exist. Some of them come in, they're focused, they've always been focused, this is what they want to do. So really understanding that most students who enter the door, and I would say at Duke, this percentage is probably even higher, most students who enter the door are already thinking about career prior to even arriving at Duke, right? And they don't always know what that means, but it's something that's on their mind. It's something they're paying attention to. So that says to us that it's really important that we're out in front and connected in ways that they see us and our colleagues as a resource. This generation, Gen Z, and there's even more and more research about this, research about sort of remote work and how they like that, how they're looking more at that. What does that mean for their future? What are the opportunities they're seeking? But a couple stats here, and I'm not going to read all of these, but 1 in 3 of them don't know what career they want yet. That's good, right? It's good that they don't understand or aren't 100% certain of what's out there. What does a job in marine science look like? What does a job in sustainable energy look like? What does a job in corporate social responsibility look like? What are jobs that aren't MDs in the healthcare field look like? So part of their opportunity at Duke is to explore and to test and to try out some of those things. More than half expect to do a job that doesn't exist yet, right? 10 years ago, we weren't looking for folks to work in AI. We weren't looking for individuals to work in driverless vehicles. We didn't really talk about data scientists. They were kind of cornered away somewhere in an organization, right? And data science and data analytics is a hugely growing field. We weren't thinking about humanities students really being a part of some of the decision making that goes on in some of these particular places, right? Social media was a part of somebody's job, not all of somebody's job, right? They are unsure or worried, and that's part of how we support them. But I think for me, one of the most exciting pieces is the sort of far side that says, when asked what drives their job selections, grads say the most important factors are contributing to the greater good, work-life balance, and compensation, right? Compensation makes sense because many of these students lived partially through the 2008 financial crisis and had families who were impacted and affected by that. So they think about, like, I want to be in a place where I have the ability to do that. It's not the primary driving force, and compensation doesn't mean I'm making $150,000 a year. It means I want to be paid in order at the rate and level where I'm able to do some of the things I'm interested in doing. Work-life balance, I'm a Gen Xer. That one is interesting to me because I always feel like you have to work to have a life. But they're very much focused on, how do I get to do the other things I want to do outside of the traditional work frame, and then contributing to the greater good. And I think that is more prevalent at Duke than any institution I've ever worked at. How do I do good? How do I make an impact? And whether that's in my job or adjacent to my job, those are things that are on the minds of our students and that we talk to them about on a daily basis. So, you talk about majors, and I'm not going to belabor this too much because we talk to students in some ways to say, your major is part of your identity at Duke. It's not your only identity, right? Computer science, vastly growing major, but so is public policy, so is environmental science, right? That these are some of the majors that actually lead to higher job opportunities. Sociology is on that list, right? So as students, come home and they say to you, I've chosen my major and I chose sociology, don't gasp, clutch your pearls and be like, oh no, you're never going to be employed, because we know those students have valuable skills and competencies that they're developing both in their academic and co-curricular experiences that align them to be really successful candidates for a variety of jobs and a variety of different roles. This is our philosophy of the Career Center. I'm not going to read it to you, but I'm going to pick out a couple different things. So we believe in this idea of career everywhere for everyone, meaning that this is the responsibility of the institution, and that the 20 staff members in the Duke Career Center don't have the ability to reach every student every day to make sure that they're feeling supported when it comes to career readiness. So we see ourselves as the hub of that process. We see ourselves as the experts, as consultants. Our job is to create tools and resources and messaging, and really be the core of an ecosystem that a student can talk to a faculty member, they could talk to a resident assistant, they could talk to a peer advisor, they could talk to a staff member, and those individuals can begin to have some of these conversations with them. So we sort of see ourselves as consultant, as creator, as curator, and as collaborator. And that creates this much larger support system across the institution. The old way of doing things was like, hey, it only happens in the Career Center. Anything that happens that's career related has to happen in the Career Center. If a faculty member is bringing in alums and who have degrees from that particular department, and they're talking about their own career pathways, we want to amplify that. We don't need to own that. If student groups and organizations want to bring employers in to talk about that, we want to amplify that. We don't need to own that, right? Like if it's happening and they're engaging, and our work is to help them tie those pieces together and make more sense and meaning around it, that leads to a successful outcome, right? That leads to students feeling more confident about career throughout their time at Duke. 3 guiding principles within that. Again, glad to talk more detail about this later, but really these are the driving forces through that career everywhere. Inclusivity is our staff, are our resources, are our programs, are the alums that we spotlight, are the jobs and opportunities inclusive to the Duke community, right? Does it mirror what we want to become? And how do we pay attention to that? And whether that's training and doing ongoing professional education with our team, it's working with our employer partners to talk to them about how to create more inclusive environments for the students coming out of Duke. It's how do we sort of understand neurodiversity and figure out ways to help employers recruit students who are coming with a completely different set of skills than most folks understand. Visibility, that's where are we, right? So the example I often give is last fall during orientation, we were out the first night of orientation on the first year quad, handing out popsicles to 1,600 first year students, right? It wasn't about, hey, come get your resume looked at. It wasn't about, hey, you have to have your life figured out. It was, hey, we're here. We're part of a resource network for you. We want you to see us as being friendly and outgoing. So we're doing appointments in athletics. We're doing appointments in the student center. We're popping up in different places so students see us as visible. But that's also our communications tools, our social media, the videos that we record and put out, the content we develop, like how we're being visible across the institution. So students know that we're here. Often we're underutilized, right? Students don't understand the value of the Career Center. And relevancy. Is our content relevant? Is are our resources relevant? Are we paying attention to changing trends in markets, in particular industries, in those places? And we rely often on our alumni friends to sort of help us and to think about like, hey, this is changing in investment banking. This is changing in technology. This is changing in healthcare. Here's what students should think about. We had some friends talking to one of the trustee committees a few months ago who basically said to us, two of the major pieces that we should be focusing on is data and students' ability to understand data and make sense of data and manipulate data. That doesn't mean they should be a data scientist, doesn't mean they should be a statistical scientist, doesn't mean they should be an economics major. It means they just have to understand how to make sense of data and do some basic data analysis and storytelling, right? Like it's just data. If you don't tell a story, if you don't wrap around that, but if you don't tell a story about your idea, about your venture, about the project you want your organization to put forward, you don't tell a story to your clients, you're not going to be as valuable there. So how are we being relevant and paying attention to what's going on across the board? And then really, our goal is to really help your student become career ready. And career readiness is a terminology we use a ton on campus. And it's really about how do they demonstrate a set of competencies that broadly prepare them for their first job and long-term for their career. I was talking to a graduating senior yesterday who's got a great job, also has a deferred acceptance to Harvard Law School and wants to know what he should be doing in 8 years. And I was like, relax, right? Like, let's get in your first job and get some experience there. And you're going to continue to build these skills and competencies that are going to help you sort of say, what's next? And you're going to listen and learn and reflect about what's important to you. But really, it's about how do they develop these competencies and make sense of these and then apply, and again, storytell how they play out. I'm not going to go through all these. We're just going to talk briefly about them, right? Communication. Where are they learning and developing communication skills while at Duke? Some of that's in the classroom, some of that's co-curricular, some of that's extracurricular, some's at an internship, some's working at summer camp, right? Critical thinking, what does that look like? Equity, inclusion, right? How are they finding ways to bring different sets of understanding and sort of focusing on that intercultural competency across the board. Leadership, I'll one sidebar here. I think this is one of the most overutilized words. Everybody thinks they're a leader. There's 4 co-presidents in some of these organizations, but really helping them define that leadership is about sometimes saying something that needs to be said, which might be considered unpopular in that moment. And it's about empowering people around you, right? It's not necessarily just having the title. It's about how do I empower people around me? So really talking to students about how are you developing those? Where have you given examples? Can you talk about that in an interview? Professionalism. This one, we could have a completely different conversation around, but if you say you're coming to something, you show up, right? If you accept a job offer, you don't continue to interview and then renege on that job offer 6 months later because something else comes along, right? And that's really important because that's a reflection on the student's professionalism. It's also a reflection on the reputation of Duke. Teamwork, they're working in collaborative partnerships all the time with their roommate, with their club and organization, and classrooms and group projects, and then technology. And this is not saying that everybody should be a coder, because in reality, if you talk to recruiters from Google, from Facebook, from Cloudera, from places like that, they're now telling you that computer science is not necessary. like they're going to still hire computer scientists, but if they're looking for software engineers, they're looking at students across multiple majors, but who have the basic understanding of how to code and do some of that information, because those humanities majors or other majors are bringing a different set of skills to the picture. So I'm going to turn it over to Rachel, who's going to talk to you about our process and some of the things that we have going on, and I'll come back at the end and then we'll open it up for questions.
Okay, thanks, Greg. And I will apologize in advance if my internet is a little off tonight. We had some weather in North Carolina today, so hopefully my internet will cooperate. But as Greg said, one of the things that we wanted to do to further the goals of those competencies that were just on the previous slide is figure out how they all fit together in the larger career development process. And you can see by the model that we created that we really see this as a lifelong process. So we use the infinity symbol intentionally because career development is often not linear. It doesn't necessarily follow step by step, and we don't want to communicate that to students. So they might come to us and be in very different stages, and that's okay. Our goal is to meet them where they are and basically take them through this process. We also recognize that the process can look very different depending on what type of industry or sector they're interested in. But we do look at 5 main pieces of the career development process and to guide students through that, including knowing about themselves, exploring options, focusing and preparing, taking action, and evaluating and refining. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what that means in the next slide. So like I said, these are stages, but students might come to these from very different places. They might have skipped several of them, and that's okay. Our goal is to meet them where they are. But in going through these different stages towards that goal of overall career readiness. Foundationally, and one of the places that we encourage to start with is that self-knowledge, that self-awareness piece, which is the first one that you'll see on this slide. So it's really helping students better understand their values, their interests, their skills, their goals, their motivations, all of the things. We really see that as the cornerstone of the entire process. As you can imagine, it can be difficult to have conversations about where somebody wants to go if they're not sure what their goals are, if they're not sure what their values are. So we have a lot of tools at our disposal to help students clarify that and enhance that knowledge. Once we feel like students have a good grasp on that and they feel confident with that, then we move on into researching careers that align with that self-knowledge. So which careers and sectors seem to really align with the student's value system? They have the company culture that the student is looking for. It's going to be a place where they can really enhance their strengths, they can utilize their strengths, and it's something that they're going to be interested in. For that congruence between the student's self-knowledge and the different options that they're exploring. From there, we want to help students look at identifying patterns of what are they noticing through their research that really seems to align well with what they're looking for. And from there, it's really important to narrow down options. We find this step to be really important because, as you can imagine, there is no shortage of opportunities right now. The list of new occupations continues to grow and grow and grow. So it can be a little overwhelming if we don't put some parameters on things and if we don't narrow to a more manageable number of options. This isn't to eliminate things permanently, but it's just to make the process a little bit more manageable. And then we help students to develop a plan around that. So that could be anything from identifying skills gaps from any of the options that they're most interested in, to getting their documents prepared, preparing for interviews, networking, all of those things. So that planning stage is really about getting ready for action and getting ready to put everything into place. And then finally, we definitely focus on reflection. And while you might see it just in this last stage, this is something that we definitely encourage throughout the entire process. So you'll see reflection pop up a lot for us, and that's because it's so critical. But definitely after a student has made a decision, just to help them think about, what does this mean for me? What did I learn from this? What might I change next time? So reflection is an integral part of this entire process for us. And we can go ahead. So something we were really, really excited about this past year was the launch of our new website, the Duke Career Hub. And anybody can go to this site. It is public facing, so you can see what your students are seeing. But this site made it much easier for students to find what they're looking for. It is much better organized than our old site. So we're really, really excited to have this up and running. We launched this site at the same time that we launched our new model for advising as well. We are now using what we call a career community model. And you can see the list of communities on the right-hand side of the slide. And we started off with 9. And you can see that most of them are focused around an industry or sector. And that is to help students get more curated content based on those interests. So if your student is interested in exploring data and tech, they can join that career community and get that tailored, customized content and information sent to them. This would be as opposed to getting maybe a more generic email from the Career Center that has a list of top jobs in our database and here's some articles. Students that opt into career communities are going to get very customized content, which is great for them. The one career community that is not industry specific is our Discovery and Explore. And this is a great community for students who are still exploring. They're still testing things out. They're still trying to figure out what they're interested in. And this is a great one for them to just engage in that exploration and learn about a variety of different things. The good news with this model too is that students are welcome to join as many communities as they would like. So they are not limited. If they are exploring a couple of different areas, they can check all of them out. And then again, they'll get that information that is curated towards those industries sent to them. Okay. So one of the things that was really important, and this goes back to what Greg was talking about earlier with our Career Everywhere model, it's really important for us at the Career Center to make sure that students can get resources 24/7. We very much recognize that not every student is going to have to physically come to the Career Center, and nor should they have to get the information that they need. We wanted to reduce that barrier and make sure that students had access to information when they could access it and when it made sense for them. So our website offers a lot of that information. They can go there to check out jobs and internships, get those specific resources. We post articles, updates about what's happening in that industry, labor market insights, and they can access all of that information 24/7. Previously, in some cases, there was a little bit of a barrier there with having to get that information from an advisor. And thankfully, with our new website and our new model, students can get this information at any time. So as I was talking about before, we're really kind of shifting away from this idea that the career advisor is the one that holds all of the information. We are trying to engage students in new ways. We are trying to make sure that they can get information when they need it, when they want it, and removing that barrier so that students can get access to the material they need when they need it. Using new technology tools has really allowed us to do that. So Handshake is our primary tool that we use. That is our job board. It's also where students make advising appointments to meet with an advisor and where they register for most of events with us. So that is our primary tool. A lot of the information that you will see in terms of like job postings, internships posting that are going on the website, Career Hub, are being fed directly from Handshake. So they do work synergistically. Another tool that we launched over the last year was Big Interview, which is a great practice interview tool. Again, reducing that barrier. A student doesn't have to wait to meet with a career advisor to do a practice interview. They can use our Big Interview tool 24/7. They can record themselves. They can get tips and resources right in the system. So that's all there ready for them. We also launched InnerStride, which is specifically for our international students and just talks through some of the nuances that are specific for international students, including visa status and navigating those kinds of systems. And we also launched Focus 2, which is a tool that helps students with that self-awareness piece that we were talking about. So again, previously, students would have to see an advisor, get some kind of code to take an assessment, or get a special email to get access to an assessment, a career assessment. And now Focus 2, they can take whatever inventories they like and have access to the results right away. So that's something that again, just better access to those tools. We have a class, which we're very excited about, the Design Your Duke class for undergraduate students. It's again, just trying to get career conversations going on in a variety of different places, engaging with our stakeholders, engaging with alumni, and making sure that students are learning about career from a variety of different people in a variety of different ways. And I think I will turn it back over to Greg for that.
So, as we sort of close, one of the things we want to really emphasize is this is a partnership, right? It's a partnership across the Duke campus, but it's also a partnership with all of you. And we like to give a little bit of advice because that's what we kind of do for a living, right? Is really sort of thinking about how do we work together as partners for your Blue Devil to have the success that they deserve, right? So part of that is being open, right? Like we come from a particular understanding of how career has been done, in our own lives, in the lives of our parents and our family members. And what often will happen is students will come to Duke and they'll take a class or they'll have an experience or they'll do a BAS connection, and it will completely shift the trajectory they talked to you about last time they talked to you, right? They all of a sudden were on a track to do investment banking, and they come back and tell you they want to do environmental science, right? They may switch back to investment banking, they may not. Like what we're asking is be open to what they're presenting. Be part of that discovery. Let them share with you those exciting moments, and then encourage them to talk to other people, right? To talk to our team, to talk to faculty members, to talk to Duke alums. I will say to you, this is my 7th institution. I have never, ever met a more committed group of alumni than Dukies. It's amazing. And they're all over. We just did an assignment in the Design Your Duke class where the students reached out to a Duke alum to do a informational interview. And they were glowing last night in class about how friendly and engaging, how helpful the information was. Be realistic, right? Like if they're saying to you, they want to do an internship and there's a financial barrier, talk to them about that, right? Talk to them about what those issues are. We are doing everything we possibly can to raise additional funds to support low paid or unpaid internships in the summer. I think we're going to have about 55 of those at $3,000 this year. The goal is to double that number in the next couple years, but really help them think through what are some of the barriers that may exist for you and your family as it relates to some of these things. Be ready, to that point earlier that they're going to throw things at you that you least expect. They're going to come back and say, I thought I was going to major in this and I'm not because I took this class with this faculty member and it was amazing. And I'm going to do research this summer and I'm not going to do what I thought I was going to do, right? That just be prepared that for many of them, they come in with a limited understanding of all the jobs and opportunities that exist. They come in with this understanding that, I have to study this to do this. And there's a realization that they don't. Rachel is too. We're college advisors. So we see first-year students and sophomores and help them think about setting up their academic courses and what they want to explore. And so many of my advisees, I met with them last week and this week, they're saying, well, I'm going to major in this and I'm going to do this certificate in this minor. And I keep saying, you can declare a certificate in minor the day before graduation at Duke, right? Like, don't lock yourself into these things. Take some classes. And if you love it, take some more. If you don't, you're not committed to that particular pathway, but that class may have a project in it that you actually can then illustrate and tell a story about in your resume that gets you the internship that you really want, right? That what we're trying to do is to say to them, leave space for you to explore, for you to test out some things and try out some ideas. And that with each new experience you have, you learn something about yourself, you develop more skills and competencies, you figure out what you really like versus sort of saying like, yes, this is the sort of chosen pathway, I'm going to do this. And for some students, that's how they're wired and that works. And that's perfectly okay. But for many, it's not. They really sort of, they really want to get into that discovery and exploration piece and really defining what they're excited about. Be vigilant with them, ask those questions. You don't have to say, did you go to the Career Center? Because we're sort of saying that's not the only way, but do ask them, like, have you talked to somebody about this, right? Have you met with one of your faculty members? We have this really cool program at Duke called Flunch. And it's students, undergraduate students can take any faculty member they want to lunch and the Office of Undergraduate Studies pays for it. So they sign up, they say why they want to take this faculty member lunch, they get a sheet of paper and they go to the faculty staff dining room on the top floor of the Broadhead Center, and they can have lunch. Encourage them to do that. Encourage them to talk to other students and to other resources on campus. This institution is full of people who are dedicated to the success of these students. Be supportive, right? Like continue to find ways. Like if they're struggling, encourage them to find other support systems, to talk to other people. I get super excited when students come in and they're seniors and are like, I thought I was going to do this, but I want to do this. I didn't pay attention to this burning desire. And we're like, okay, let's figure out how we get you there. What do you need to do? What do we need to tweak? How do we pivot? But there was this sense of reflection that they finally gave themselves space for that they didn't have before. And they were on this trajectory and path. Or students who sort of, Dean Valerie Ashby, our Dean of the Trinity School of Arts and Sciences, said to me when I interviewed, she said, I would love for students to understand that there are pathways beyond pre-health and pre-wealth, right? Like a lot of students come in and they say, I'm going to do bio pre-med, I'm going to do economics and the finance minor, and I'm going to do investment banking. And some students do that, or consulting, some students do that. But they also often find that there's other pathways that build upon those skills and experiences they have. And we want to be partners in this, right? Like, and that partnership sometimes is a little tough love, right? Like if you want information, some of that information you can find. We will sort of give you some information, but our preference, and sometimes I will sort of push with folks, is that you ask your son or daughter to come talk to somebody, right? So if I'm telling you information and then you're translating to them, it's like the telephone game, right? It's not going to translate the same way. And there's questions that I might ask that you may not ask. And there's questions you may ask that I may not ask. So if we're asking questions, if we're putting that student in front of as many resources as possible, they get to make that choice, right? They want, more than anything else, they want you to be proud of them. And part of that comes from their desire to do something that they get really excited about. And we're fortunate, right? I try to say to my mom, having done this all these years, she always says, like, can you tell my friends what your job is again? And I always sort of say, like, I get to work with a student who comes with an idea or an inkling of the things that really get them excited. And we get to help get them closer to that. We may not get there when their first job, but our job is to give them those opportunities to have those experiences, to find a support system, to find an opportunity in place to talk about those experiences, to build for that next experience, right? And this is cliche, and I say it every single day, but your career is what you look back upon the day you retire. It's not what you set out to do anymore. These students are not going to spend 30 years at GE, right? They're not going to spend 30 years at Morgan Stanley. They're not going to spend 30 years at Amazon. They're going to spend 2. They're then going to go to a startup. Then they might do their own venture. Then they're going to go to graduate school. Then they're going to do something different, right? These students are likely to have 8 different careers, right? Not jobs, careers, changing industry, changing field, stepping out to do something that they've always wanted to be able to do. So it is about partnership. It is about support. It is about that sort of ecosystem. And we're committed to this. I mean, this is why we talk about career everywhere for everyone, right? That it is a university commitment to really make sure that students have access to the tools, to the resources, and to the people that will help them land that first opportunity, and then continue to find a community to support them for the rest of their working time. The unfortunate thing is for these students that, based on data, they're probably going to be working for 70 years. So they're going to have a lot of opportunities to try a lot of things. And we want them to feel comfortable that if they're in that hallway of opportunities and they walk into a door and they close that door behind them, that they want to celebrate whatever that opportunity is, learn from that, build skills and competencies, and then when they're ready, come back out into that hallway to explore more of those opportunities. And that's exciting work. And we are committed to doing it at the highest level we possibly can at Duke.
Okay, well, thank you, Greg and Rachel. That was really great. So we'll jump into some Q&A. To our parents and families, if y'all still have questions, please go ahead and put those in the Q&A and we will get to all of them, hopefully, or as many as we can. So we'll start with this first question. My son is a sophomore economics major. He would like to go into investment banking and is actively using Handshake to apply for internships. He was not prepared for heavily technical interviews and doing 2 to 3 interviews before really making headway with the hiring firm. He's also being hit with interviews for the summer of 2022, as well as the summer of 2023. Who's responsible at Duke for leading these kids through the process so they know what to expect? Is it the Career Center or the economics department?
It's kind of all the above. So it's not necessarily departments. We do that. The Duke Financial Economics group does that. So our good colleagues, Emma and John, Emma teaches a course around preparing students for careers in finance. John spent 30 years on Wall Street and really does a lot of work with students in that way. We to be completely honest, we fight a lot with our partners in investment banking, right? That you're asking a student who may have little experience in the field to commit to a internship a full year ahead of having much experience, right? So they may be looking for a sophomore year experience at the same time they're committing to a junior internship, or a summer experience as a first year student and committing to a sophomore internship. And it's complicated, right? But it's a coordinated approach. We work with DFE all the time, probably weekly in many ways. They know who's coming to campus to recruit. They talk to us about alums that they're bringing into their classes and to programs that they're doing. And it's sort of focusing on all of those pieces, and then navigating what the sort of system looks like. And there's tools for the student to sort of say like, hey, if I know I want to look for these types of internships, they can set it up in Handshake that it just sends them a weekly email to say, here's the new internships in this field that got posted this week, and can then work through that particular process. So it's a coordinated effort. It happens a lot of places across campus. And then there's a lot of student organizations in that particular profession that also support students, because those are students who are coming back from internships, the leaders of those organizations coming back for internships, who can tell other students like, hey, here's some of the tools, here's some of the things you need to pay attention to, here's some of the questions you might get asked in the interview process.
Thank you, Greg. We've got another question in the chat. It says, should the Career Center have been in contact with my junior student already, or do you wait for him to contact you? He wants an internship, but really doesn't have any idea of what he should do.
Rachel, you want to jump in?
Feel free to add. So students will get contact from the Career Center. They will get emails. They will get different information coming from different channels. We definitely encourage students to contact us though. That way we can really work to identify what their needs are and work with them one-on-one. So students are getting information from the Career Center. It's just that oftentimes we want them to also come talk to us if they need something specific. And we have a lot of different channels for that. So students can still come to us for one-on-one advising. We also offer drop-in advising multiple times a week. And so students have a variety of ways to reach out and connect with us. And Greg, I don't know if you want to add anything to that too.
So I'll add two things, and we'll try to answer two questions at once. Part of it is, we don't say, hey, you have to come in for an appointment, because it really depends where the student is in their process. And sometimes they're talking to other people about that and they want then to have another conversation. So we don't force them to come to the Career Center, because not all students need that level of support. Many do, and we're here, and we're also pushing out information through multiple channels. So it's not just emails coming from the Career Center. They're going in other weekly newsletters from other departments. They're going on other organizations and departments' social media. It shows up in all different types of places. And the student has to sort of decide when they're ready to have that conversation. So you encourage them to say, hey, if talk to somebody in the Career Center, we went to this presentation, it was really helpful. Somebody can be there to sort of support you in that particular process. As far as like the one-to-one, we're not saying that we don't do one-to-one, But if our only mode of engagement with students around advising was one-to-one appointments and they were 30 minutes, we would never be able to see every student at Duke, right? So part of it is one-to-one engagement will always be a part of the work that we do. It can't be the primary way we engage with students because we'll never get to all of them, right? We'll never get in front of them in the right amount of time to sort of have those places. We do a ton of one-to-one engagement. It may not be in what is a traditional advising appointment. It may be in a drop-in. So we do a ton of these, I call them career triage. They're 15-minute appointments. We do them in person at different locations. We do them every Friday that students can sign up for. Our peer ambassadors do them all the time. So a student should be able to see somebody from our team without an appointment several times during the week. So if they're like, hey, I just saw this internship that I really want to apply for and I haven't had anybody look at my resume. Can you look at it? We will get them in within a few days, like if not that day, depending upon availability. So I don't want people to say that, hey, we're pushing that away. It's just that we know that for some of them, that's not the way they begin to explore or do the work. They often come to us when they're like, hey, I want to talk through this. I want some advice on it. I want to sort of explore in different ways, but we're pushing that information out in as many channels as we can. So there's 300 college advisors that work with first year students and sophomores till they declare a major. I talked to all 300 of them. Rachel and our colleague Alicia did a training for those folks. The newsletter that goes out to those advisors monthly often has something that the Career Center is doing in it. So we're like, we're kind of everywhere. And then figuring out where students surface. And it's often word of mouth, right? A student will say, hey, my friend said you all were helpful. So it's really, when I talk about visibility, one of our huge pushes is to be out there more. So students sort of say like, hey, it's not scary, or I don't have a resume or I don't know what I want to do. Why would I go there, right? It's like, this is a group of people who want to help me think through these particular experiences and opportunities. And I want to take full advantage of that.
And if I could just add one more thing to hopefully clarify a little bit about our advising model, and I appreciate this question. I would liken it to essentially like a 3-tier model of advising. So the first tier, maybe self-help would be the best description of that, which is where a student just needs a resource or something like that. They could go to the website and get that, and then they feel pretty confident to move forward on their own. Tier 2 would be more like brief staff assisted, which is what Greg was talking about with our drop-in advising services. So a student has a quick question, they need a document reviewed, something like that. And then again, they're feeling pretty good. And then tier 3 would be more of that individual advising, where a student has deeper questions that cannot be answered in that short time frame of some of the other tiers, and they need to meet with an advisor multiple times. And by having this tiered structure, we're able to support the students that need those more in-depth conversations and also provide the information for the students who benefit from a quick resource, and then they feel good to go on their way. So where we were struggling a little bit before, I think, is with that first tier of having accessible content available to students 24/7, so that it was not behind an advisor and that was the only way they could get that information. So I appreciate that question. I hope that helps to clarify a little bit.
Thank y'all. Our next question is it too late to use Handshake for internships for this summer?
Michael, these questions always come with a depends. It really depends on the field in the industry. Some recruiting has closed in some places, but there's always opportunities. Handshake, depending upon the company, there's auto approve. There's hundreds of postings every single day that get filled into that system. And there's other pathways. So we can work with students and say, okay, here's what you wanted to do. That might be a little challenging. Let's try it. But what's sort of pathway number 2? So if it's like, okay, maybe I wanted to work in marketing at Spotify. Well, the Spotify internship process is gone, but do you want to work in marketing in entertainment? Let's figure out what those look like, right? And in industry recruiting, generally has a timeline, but there's always companies outside of that timeline. There's always opportunities that surface because somebody scored new business, there's been an acquisition, things shift, all that sort of stuff. So it's never too late. I mean, we know students who get internships in May for the summer because the organization finally had their time and bandwidth to actually post an interview. But there's still lots of students who are getting internships right now for the summer. Lots in the nonprofit space. There's still more in the communication space, and then in smaller organizations and startups, there's always things that are surfacing because it's as they have a need, right? Like there are certain organizations that are hiring 100 interns every summer. There are some that hire one. So the ones that hire one often recruit on a completely different timeline than others in their particular industry vertical. There's all these internship questions. So I'm going to say a few more and then I'll let Rachel chime in too. It depends on the industry. So if it's investment banking, the 2023 internship cycle is now. Most other fields don't start recruiting for next summer till late summer, early fall would be the earliest for anybody else, right? So some of the consulting, some other finance, some tech will recruit in fall of 22 for summer of 23. The question about first-year students, we encourage first-year students to do something, to have an experience. That may be if they worked at summer camp, going back to camp, right? If that's what they want to do, that's great. They should do something and be able to tell a story about what that is and sort of say that, like, I went back and I was a counselor in training, and then I was a counselor, right? I ran a part of the camp. Or we say to them, is there some other project you want to do? Could you work with a nonprofit? Is it volunteer? And it's the experience. And we talk to them about summer experiences. What did you do this summer that helped you build competencies and skills that align you for a more competitive sophomore year internship, right? So for some students, they have access to certain internships and fields because they've done things before. For some, we say, hey, maybe your project is if you want to get a job. Maybe your project is you talk to 10 alumni or 5 alumni in fields of interest that you have to learn more about that, right? So if you're building some understanding, that's a good utilization of your summer. We don't want to put this pressure on first year students to say, you have to have an internship, because frankly, some organizations are like, you just don't have the skills yet to be valuable to our organization. Some will take you. So it's sort of inconsistent, but we always say, focus on doing something in the summer that you'll be able to build some skills and competencies around that will help you make more decisions, but help build that portfolio of skills.
And I was just going to add something that we're excited about is we are currently surveying employers that we partner with very questions around recruitment timelines to make that more obvious to students that we work with. So that's actually a project we have coming up, is to try to gather those data from our employer partners and make that more accessible on our website and things like that. So students, there's more transparency around it is the goal that we're going for. So hopefully more to come on that very soon.
Okay, thank y'all. Well, it looks like we don't have any more questions in the Q&A, but I will wrap us up with one last question. And just that, what conversation should our parents and families be having with their students now that would help them engage with the Career Everywhere process?
I'll let Rachel go first.
Thanks. I'll go back to I think our second to last slide of just being open and curious, I think, is just a great mentality to have, and having conversations with your student of talking about their classes and how their classes have been going, what have they liked, what kinds of experiences they've had, extracurriculars, and just helping to kind of process through that a little bit and explore it. I think, there's so many great things about Duke, and I think one of them is that students get such broad exposure in the first 2 years of their academic program, and having parents and families as a resource to go back and think through some of those things and what do those experiences mean for them can be really helpful dialogue. And that's true no matter where they are in their academic program. Being a resource, encouraging them to seek out additional support like the Career Center if they have more questions or needs. But we definitely encourage curiosity. That's part of how we operate. So that would be my thought on that too.
I'll just add, I want to play off that sort of asking for help. I think undergraduate students don't do that enough. And frankly, you all are paying for them to have that access to these world-class resources and to people who care. So it's often sort of saying to them, who else are you talking to on campus, right? Who are the other people you're having these conversations with? When you have questions, where do you go? And if they don't know, then recommend it. Hey, have you considered the Career Center? Have you talked to an academic guide? Have you talked to a TA in one of your classes? Have you met with your professor? And encouraging them to build community. And that term networking has, for some students, is a dirty word. They feel like I got to collect all these names and I don't know what I'm going to do with them. And we talk more and more about, like, how are you building your community at Duke? Who are the people that you want to run ideas by, who you want to have conversations with, who you want to sort of actually think out loud with? And often we'll have students just come to us and say, this idea or this thought has been rattling around in my head for weeks and I don't know where else to talk about it. Can I just talk with you? And you're like, yes. I mean, I've gotten to the point lately where I'm seeing more and more students over coffee somewhere on campus and not in my office, because for them, that gives them this sort of comfort level where they don't feel that this is like, I have to know what I'm doing. It's just like, hey, we're going for coffee and having a conversation. It's a career conversation. It's a career advising appointment at the end of the day. But just by saying, like, hey, let's go grab coffee, I'll meet you somewhere on campus. One of my favorite appointments was walking through the gardens with a student for a half hour. So it's really about, who are you talking to on campus? Like, who are you finding as part of your support system? They have you, which is super valuable, right? And they, like I said earlier, they want to make you proud. Expanding that ecosystem by encouraging them to reach out to other folks on campus who do this because we care about their success. We care about them, and we want them to sort of have access to those opportunities that they've worked really hard for.
Okay, I did see one last question pop up.
That's an easy one. Yeah, we encourage them. So Idealist is another source for sort of nonprofit NGO. Handshake is not the end all be all. The nice thing about Handshake is those are organizations who have selected Duke as an institution where they want to post those roles. So they've made that additional effort. But yes, indeed, more students are finding opportunities in LinkedIn. That's a significant change over the last few years. That used to be those used to be more experienced jobs, but folks are using LinkedIn as a place to post entry-level hires at particular organizations. So yeah, our strategy is like, look in multiple places. Like, some places don't, like an organization like Spotify, unless it's a very unique job, they don't even post on many college campuses, right? They'll say, hey, here's our social media, here's this opportunity at Spotify, go to our website to apply. So it's really helping the students build a strategy of how to find those opportunities.
All right. Well, I just want to say thank you again to you, Greg and Rachel, for being here, for providing so much valuable information for our parents and families. For everyone who attended, if you do want to watch this again, or you happen to join a little late, we have been recording the webinar, and so that should be posted to our website over the next couple of days, and so just be on the lookout for that. Thank you again for joining us this evening. If y'all have any follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to our office at familyprograms@duke.edu. And with that, take care, everybody. Have a great rest of your night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.